How's it going, everybody? You're listening to the Let's Talk podcast, the show that brings you the latest in relevant and current trends and conversations about our daily living, the Bible, and also some very fun and unexpected points of view. With your hosts, Joey Santos and Brad Wilson.
Hey, Brad Wilson, how you doing, man?
I'm just doing good.
Another week.
Yeah, our producer's on us to start talking, isn't
he? I mean, I was proud of him yesterday. He led the staff meeting.
He did.
Like, he just kind of like taking over.
Yeah.
Taking control.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason, the name's Jeremy Braley. There's a reason his initials are JB. There's another JB in Cincinnati that kind of just takes over and leads the way.
There we go.
So we kind of saw it yesterday. So maybe we should start referring to him as our leader,
right? Exactly. I mean, he just took over. That was beautiful. I mean, it was a beautiful sight. And he got his little his minions right by him. Matt James is just like.
That's true. He does have his minions. I don't know how Matt always makes it into this conversation.
We have making sure it happens.
He sounds like the most interesting man in the world.
It is.
He's not.
Oh, man. That's a great way to start a podcast. It's an early morning, man.
It is an early morning. That's why I got two drinks.
Exactly.
Coffee, water.
You got coffee and water.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing. Along those lines of Jeremy leading the way yesterday, he asked a question to the staff, and I think I wish we had more time to unpack that. So with the staff, but let's go ahead and let's just talk about that today, because I thought it was interesting. He talked about the whole aspect of feeling guilty, right? So. What? Let me give you people the context of what he said. Is that we are reading this book as a staff and talks about all these things we got to do to have this Christian life, right? Read the Bible and pray and go to church. I mean, all these things that we should be doing constantly, and those are not bad things, and those are actually good things that is part of our relationship with God. The problem is, growing up, and here it is. I mean, he is. Pastor's son, you're a pastor's son, I'm a pastor's son. So our background dictates that growing up, there was no other option but, follow the trend and go to church. And even like we had to behave a certain way because people are looking at us. We're part of the pastor's family. And there's this spotlights on a family when you're in that scenario. So all this to say that I think churches, in a way, have got really good in guilting people into you have to do this, you have to do that, and in making people understand or driving people to the point of, this is what Christian life looks like. The thing about it, though, and it's kind of funny he mentioned that yesterday because I just had a conversation with the staff last week, my team, and I was talking about, every time you guilt someone into doing something, they may do it at first, but they start to formulate the escape plan. I want out of it. And reflecting on all this together, I was looking, this latest generation and how they're away from church. Do you think that's something related to how we have used guilty to keep people in church or to drive their Christian life? Or do you think that's the context we're in?
I think maybe in some regards, but overall, actually, no. Because I think what we talked about is there's a part. The truth is, no church is perfect. So what we grew up in, it's like what we grew up in was what we knew or familiar with, what our parents knew and were familiar with. And so as they're teaching us these things, I mean, you've seen that's changed in culture, where it just looked. And part of the reason you did all this stuff is Sundays used to be sacred. So when I was growing up, there wasn't only the good the good athletes would play anything on Sunday. It isn't now where, I mean, any kid can play on Sunday. It's like, okay, you got these leagues, these little kids, and they're picking daisies and running around in a pack and playing soccer. So
we tried to set up a church event yesterday. We couldn't because Sunday was like, yeah, that's not going to work because all the events out there.
yeah, which is I mean, let's be honest, it's just an excuse with the events. So, and if it's good, they'll go to it. The problem, like on the things sometimes with church events, there's our hook for it is we're like, well, come to this event, and we use the guilt strategy to try to guilt people into the event. But if it's something good, and if it's something that people see the value in it, they'll be there for it.
Okay, so let's unpack that because it's kind of interesting. You start saying that if you look years ago,
Yeah.
church Sunday, the church thing, it was a sacred thing. You don't touch it. You don't mess with it. It's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay, today this does not look that way, but look from this point up. Did you raise a generation to go to church, or did you raise a generation to have a Christian life?
Well, going to church was part of. I mean, that was part of life. But what was taught and what a lot of people left there with was and there's been a lot of books written about it. There's been a lot of conversations about it. But for most people growing up, my teaching was what people were passing down. It was more about rules than like a relationship, which is the biggest difference in Christianity and every other religion or belief is that you can actually have a legitimate relationship with the creator of everything. Mm-hmm. But it's hard sometimes to get there because a lot of people's familiarity with Christianity or religion are, well, there's a number of rules that I have to follow, a number of things I have to do in order to get to this point.
Okay, so you mentioned, but okay, that's fine. But let's look from what your statement. You said, if people see the value, if people see what's good for them, they'll go to church. So and I'm not saying that in a very direct way, but who's to blame here? Has the church lost the sense of displaying what values are that people should be attracted to, or this generation just lost it, just don't see it, it's just blind to what the church is offering today? Because I mean, let's be honest, the church from 30 years ago, the church from today in general is not the church from 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So all the church today is very, depending on the church, what they offer is very comparable to a stadium, rock show anywhere. Mm-hmm. So there's a entertainment value that church has added to its services, and before, those things were never components of the church experience on Sunday. I'm not here advocating for us not to have those elements because, again, if you don't have those connectors, that's part of people's lives, it might be harder to connect them, to bring them in, right? I'm not saying that those are completely wrong. I'm saying where did the people lose their sense of value, in your opinion? Where that was lost, and then let's not just bash down what's wrong. How do you see the recovery? Like, how do we recover from it as a church?
Well, I mean, you look today. So you look today for kids in a generation, and let's just be candid with it. You look at your parents at a certain stage, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do what my parents do. So if it's sports, a lot of your allegiances I mean, both my sons are born in Ohio. They're not Ohio State fans. They're Michigan fans. Why? Because their dad's a Michigan fan. I've taken them to the games there. They like the Cincinnati teams, but they like the Detroit teams because I grew up in Michigan. I'm a Detroit fan with a sports team there, so you pass it down. And so when you look at stuff that's valued and with kids, the irony of it is if church and God isn't a priority, and sometimes we want to separate both of them, but if you don't make gathering to being in community with other believers, if you don't make that a priority, what in the world what makes you think your kids are going to see it as a priority when they get older? Because that's just what they look at our habits and they look at what we do. So as we continue to move forward and one of the reasons you look at what's going on and we don't value gathering on Sundays for church, how would you expect in the future the kids to go do that? Because if your routine is, and listen, I love football as much as anyone, and there's times on Sundays where I think to myself, man, if I wasn't on church staff and paid to go there, it would be so easy for me to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to find something. I'm going to listen to sermons during the week. I'm going to tune in online for a little bit on Sunday, but I'm just going to stay home and get stuff set up for all these NFL games. And knowing, my kids, if that's what they see or going to these events, some people say, well, are you against youth sports and all that stuff? No, I'm not. But if all your youth sports and those activities, you're invested in all these other things on the weekend, don't be upset or frustrated when later on the road when your kids aren't invested in Sunday, because they're just going to model what they see from you, because we prioritize that stuff by what we do. And the thing that goes along with it that makes it even more difficult is as churches have become larger and larger, the idea is, and in some ways as Christians to become more like consumers, we sometimes will evaluate and we want to go someplace that has great programs, the worship that's appealing to us. Hey, this is great and this is awesome. And we go these places and too many people have the expectation that my family, I'm depending on you guys who are paid to do everything. So you need to make sure that you're preaching sermons that connect with me, that feed me up. You need to make sure that my kids are learning and growing. And so a lot of what's happened in culture is we've kind of, to me, taken our hands off the responsibility and we've put it on the church. And then as kids go through, and sometimes we're not seeing them where we think they should be, then it creates a taste of, well, I don't know, maybe the church doesn't have all the answers because things aren't where they should be. Whereas it would be fascinating to me if parents and going through myself with my kids and looking back and saying, man, there is my window with them in my house is a lot smaller than it used to be. And sometimes I can kick myself because I'm like, man, if I would have been more intentional when they were younger, just talking to them in a way they can understand about God, and one of the things we've been talking about, committing to God and what it looks like. If I'd have been as deliberate as I am about, hey, let's go over some of the recruits coming into Michigan. I mean, they may be in a different place. So I think a lot of the stuff comes together, and I don't think there's an intentionality on people's parts to minimize these things with God. It's just
they're used to it.
They're used to it, and churches became so good.
The church drove that.
They became so good at the programs.
Yeah.
And luring people in and making it be appealing that they can't, people come in there and like, well, they'll take care of everything.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I lived a good part of my life, and I still do. Just a little part of it in an entertainment side of it, which, big Christian events and conventions and producing those things. And it's kind of interesting to me that I absolutely see the value. I see I see there's a value in using those moments
Yeah.
to grab people's attention. Absolutely, but I think you're right in a in a sense of I think we have fed people for so long now that come here have something to show you. Come here have something to show you. Sit and watch and see what I'm about to do because this is going to be cool. And we got people just used to that. Come here because that. And I remember. I know nobody from Indianapolis is listening to this, so that's okay. I can't talk about them. But the church I was serving in Indianapolis, it was amazing. We used to spend. Think about this: in a one weekend service, we spent around $50,000 just in one weekend service. That was Christmas weekends. $50,000 in terms of production. And the interesting thing is that at the end of the service, me and the worship guy and the lead pastor would get together and we would say, how are we going to top this next year? That was our mindset. Like, we cannot just repeat what we did. We got to make it bigger now. So it became this thing with us, like, oh man, we got to make this thing bigger. And we grew in that entertainment value of what we're doing. We got to a point that I remember one year, we had to do 5 services that weekend, in one weekend, to feed all the people that come in. It's still, next Sunday, we're back to 3 services with 2.5 full buildings. Do you know what I mean? So it was not, it was attracting people for our weekends. We got famous in town for the best Christmas weekend. We're putting all the money in it. It was great. It was a great showcase of what we're able to do. It was not growing the church because guess what? We cannot build the church. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
We're not the ones building the church. So again, I don't want people to listen and think, okay, you guys are just bashing down.
Yeah.
Let's just be tremendously honest here. You guys are just bashing down the church to do programming like this because you can't.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not true. I think what I like about the season we're in is that we are learning how to use that technology with a full purpose now.
Yeah.
I have conversations with our team, right, and Jeremy and Dave and Matt and on a weekend experience, and we're having these conversations about how we make this better, how we leverage technology, how we leverage programming, but really put a purpose in the experience for people to actually have a result. Like, what is the result we want? What's the objective when people come out of the building? So when we have our programming meetings, we want those things to have meaning, not just entertainment, so people can say, oh man, you guys pulled this off. And I think, I would say this, Christ Church, and if you disagree with me, let's have the debate, because that's what this is about. I think today, Christ Church is a church that on Sundays has a very low entertainment value, but has a huge, gigantic biblical value in everything we do. I mean, and I'm saying, I think you can have both, but you cannot make entertainment bigger than the biblical side of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the consequence we're paying right now. That's we're paying that price right now. We have generations coming that's like, I don't see you. I don't see the entertainment. That means you're probably not the church I want to be part of.
Yeah, because the data says of the younger generations, there's the words real, authentic, and so you're like, okay, where are they picking this up from? Like, where does this stuff happen? Because like you said, we're unique in this area where we have some really good churches, some big churches in the area around us that are doing great ministry and doing great things. And I think, like we said with this, is for us, we can't do some of the things here that at Christ Church that we could do 10 years ago or 15 years ago or even 5 years ago. But for us, it's figuring out how we can be as effective, like you said, with what we're doing right now. And, okay, what do we prioritize and value? And I think at some point, as God continues to build his church, the key is with any of these things is figuring out, and I know I believe places are thinking this as well, is how do you as you get larger and larger and you're able to do more and more stuff like you were talking about with the church in Indianapolis, is how do you make sure that the important stuff, like the core stuff there, is it's connecting with your families, with your parents, with your people, with the kids, and they're not losing the key stuff for themselves to grow spiritually. It's not getting lost in as Kanye would say, the flashing lights.
Yeah.
And I think that's been that to me has been kind of the dilemma, because let's be honest, before with this stuff, it was like it was an arms race to get to this point. And then now everything's being reevaluated, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago as we looked at this stuff and said, okay, these things were great to get people in, but if there's one thing we've learned over the past couple of years is just because it was getting people in didn't mean they were really in. They were, because you can go, it's like I said, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, man, you can be committed and you can go to church and not really be committed to God.
Yeah.
Because even Jesus himself says, he's like, hey, not everyone says, Lord, Lord,
Exactly.
is getting in. I mean, at some point, at the end of the day, in animal terms, two things, the sheep and the goats. And we may love goats down here of who the goat is, but I'm telling you, when your passport is stamped, it's time to go home. You don't want to be a goat at that point.
Okay, we'll be right back. It's official. CC Life Plus has launched, and we truly feel blessed to be able to reach people in and through the new way of online living. What makes CC Life Plus even more special and better all around is that it is for everyone. This platform has kids content for students, podcasts, music, and traditional content to help you grow as Christians. So there really is something for everyone on here. We hope you have had a chance to check it out. If not, please do. We'll be adding new material monthly, and we'll post on the social media channels when we do, so make sure to subscribe and follow our social media channels so you know when new content is released. Now, we're back. Let's unpack that a little bit more. So it's kind of, I'm puzzled by the fact that how do you raise the next generation to understand that? Because we have forces outside the church.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, people are concerned about TikTok. People are concerned about social media. But still, 95% of teenagers, 95% of them prefer spend time on YouTube. It's not TikTok. It's not social media. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. 95% of teenagers spend their time on YouTube. So you're talking about a generation that's fully connected through technology, and their perception of gathering content is different than you and I growing up.
Yeah.
So we have to adjust now. We can fight, and we're going to lose that fight. We can guilt them into it. We can, whatever that is. But so I think it's interesting. In the last segment, you said, if you stay home and watch sermons during the week and not go to church on weekends, that's the example you're setting to your kids. Mm-hmm. Well, you may not be setting the example to your kids right now, but that's already the life they're living right now. They're already sitting at home watching YouTube. So how again, I'm going to push again the button of what's the goal? Is the goal to push this next generation to have a Christian life, or the goal is to push this next generation to go back to Sunday church? Or is both? And how do they actually connect together? If it's not both, which one's the most important one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is probably where I'm old school, but I think to me the answer is both. Now, obviously, I'm not one of the apostles, so.
Do you want me to bring Matt James back in?
Well, I did have a request for when you're talking about the Christmas services. I have a request. Maybe we can end with that because it includes our producer. But back to what you were saying is I think the reason behind the Sunday gathering is, well, it was one. I mean, we see in the New Testament that there was a commitment to gathering together. Now, the idea of gathering, it's changing in culture, and it's changed. And so, yes, I'm old school, and I think that however you want to get to it, and some people this will be an argument for years to come, that I would rather gather with people like in person and be there. There's something design, wiring. There's something about being together with people. It's part of the reason now where you look at and we're starting now to see some of the information, but that's why a lot of people were about with when everyone was kind of just isolated, not with themselves. You heard a lot of people that they were longing to get back and get connected with human connection with people there. But I realize that for some people in the digital age we live in, that things are going to be different now. So some people are going to gather, some people will gather online. Like we got people who faithfully, week in and week out, they're with us online. And our statistics, I was reading something from you today, that our statistics of people there, that it's not just like they're jumping online for 5 minutes. They're with us for a good chunk of time. But also that alongside of that the gatherings are irrelevant if you're not committed to Christ, if you're not committed to growing closer to Him, because to me the gatherings they support that. Like those things go. The mistake in some regards of what we talked about growing up was like, hey, the going to church isn't the end all, because if you're not committed to God, if you're not, that relationship isn't growing, church should help. It should be in addition to help facilitate that. And it's almost like a byproduct of it. Hey, we're going together because we want to hear from the Lord. We want to encourage other people. We want to celebrate, we want to celebrate what He's doing. And it's like an add-on, not to it. Hey, this is my one thing. This is the only thing I need to do during the week. So it's got to.
How do you move out of that though? See, because I think, and I'm not saying people that come to church, they come with this only motivation to like, that's what I'm going to do on Sunday, and now I feel like I'm good with God. Mm-hmm. But I think at the same time, we in general as a church have created a culture of guilting people, like you have to be here because if you're not here, something is wrong. On the flip side of it, though, it's kind of funny because you say you're old school, but I think churches that invest heavy on entertainment, I have to assume, and I being there, mm-hmm. we knew that if we did not spend that kind of money, if we did not produce that kind of level of entertainment on a Christmas weekend, we will never get 6,000-7,000 people to come. Yeah. That means if I don't have the high entertainment value, if churches today that invest heavy on entertainment remove that component and go a weekend with just a regular service, do you think they're afraid that like we're going to lose people? Do you think like consciously they know? That means that confirms to me we really have an entire generation right now mm-hmm. that do not understand what being church really is. Not being in church, be the church. Mm-hmm. So then now we have a bigger problem then, though, right? Now we have a bigger problem because even if I put my foot down and say we're going to be a church that we're going to just focus on presenting the gospel every Sunday the best way we can, and focus on people's Christian life and raise them the way they need to be raised spiritually, that might not attract a lot of people in, based on what this generation is used to.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but we'll see what I like and why. The difference to me, what I feel the commitment, and I'm hearing people here talk about, which is exciting, is people are hearing this idea of community. And I think what we're talking about and what we've really committed ourselves to here is this idea of, community begins here. And we want you to our goal is we want you to be able to find like community here with people, but first and foremost, we want you to find community with God. And so where we may from the programming and some of that standpoint, just because there's certain things, like you said, we can't do, but I think the emphasis and the intentionality on us is because we're not moving off this community piece.
No, we're not.
And I think the stuff emphasizing with people is we want you to be in community. We want you committed to God. Is that, to me, where the hope is, we talked a little bit about this last Sunday, is that I really think and believe that if our people and if Christians in general, when you begin to commit to God and you see the changes that happen in your life or in your family, that is the most powerful tool in bringing other people into it, because that's really what people are looking for today. Like most of the parents I know with their kids, it's okay. How do we, like you said, they have so much information that back in our day, I'm gonna have to get on my bike, on my Kent 5-speed, ride that thing down to the Owasso Public Library and go in there and look in the encyclopedias and go in there and deal with a librarian and be like, hey, can you show me where this book is and help me find this? And then you have to go there and take notes or pay 25 cents to use the copy machine, which was a racket. I mean, she probably just stashing her Diet Coke stash for the librarians there, right? And so we do all these things. But now kids, the big thing for kids today and for young people and even people in general today is we have more information than we need. We have all the information we need, but it's helping to determine what's valuable, like what should we hold on. And so I think when this community aspect is our people continue to grow and learn, as we continue to learn more about God, then the challenge is, and to me, you may use challenge or opportunity, is I think a big responsibility or part of what we do is encouraging our people and helping them to see as that's growing of, hey, this is the valuable stuff for you, and these are the things that you share these with other people. If we talk about being, witnesses, if you're talking with other moms, other dads, or other students or other people about, hey, as you committed to God, here's the changes, here's where your life went, and they're figuring out how to sharing that, inviting people in the community. That's where I think legitimate growth comes from, because it's much easier to stay connected to that than it is if it's constantly with us trying to be like, okay, how do we top this weekend? How do we top this weekend?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny. You said great things there. And I think part of like I said, the challenge of the opportunity for us, we got a huge opportunity in front of us with this community, is that, one, you're probably not going to find much of an entertainment value what we do. But in the fact that we don't have the entertainment like some churches may do, we still pursue excellence in what we do.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
So we pursue excellence in everything we do. So you can find a really relevant substance in what we do, and we're going to present it with excellence because that's our focus. But the thing, though, is as I look at this generation, look at my own kids, I see my kids going in once they jump into adulthood. They probably don't care for. They're not going to church for consume content. They don't need it.
Yeah.
They can go a lot of other places from
Yeah.
home to get content, and they don't need entertainment because again they can get entertainment at home much better than the church can offer. So the church has to offer something that's different, and that's what I think for us the vision of building a community of bringing people to just be part of a community and let God do the rest. It is a phenomenal vision for us to have because that's what people just need to be part of, right? So God will do the rest, but we gotta be able to show people like, this is not a place just for you to find content.
Yeah.
This is not a place for you to consume. The thing about it, though, this is not possible. The model that we're presenting to this community right here in Mason, this model depends on one key component, is the person's effort to want to be part of it. See, if I go to a church because that church has everything set up that I can just go in and drop my kid off and I don't need to worry about their children's ministry. I drop my kid off a student ministry and I know they have a phenomenal, state-of-the-art, high-value student ministry. I can walk in the auditorium and they have this whole thing set up for me. There's not much effort on my end. All I have to do is show up.
Yeah.
I think for us, that's not going to work if people come in with the idea like, I'm just going to drop in, drop out. For you to be part of a community, this vision of community requires effort if you want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And I think people got to understand that. Because you cannot be part of a community without, because community is a relationship. There's no relationship without effort. Right? So I'm gonna have to make an effort here to be part of this community, Christ Church. I need to go in knowing I'm gonna have to put some effort in this thing. The thing about it though, I don't know anything that's more biblical than that.
No, and I think that's where we're comfortable with that being a landing place for us, is that was so evident when the church began, is people were putting forth the effort to be a part of it. Like they want to be a part of it. And so just knowing, even here that, talking with some people that they're struggling to find the community, and, a question to ask is, well, what type of effort are you putting into it? Because my guess would be your effort is somewhere else. And so when it's somewhere else, and if you're not putting the effort to be in community with God, you're not putting the effort to be in community with other believers, but that means you're putting the effort somewhere. So if your effort is in isolating from people, well, there's your answer. Or if it's in other communities, like sometimes it's where whoever we spend our time with, they're going to be an influence. And so sometimes people, if you're like, I don't feel like my kids are being influenced, the people around, I'm just struggling for community. It's like, you're the one that's making the one that's making the choice.
Exactly.
And that's where it comes down to. So in some regards, it depends on what you want. And that's where I think where the ownership needs to come in, because if we understood, I think, how close we were at various times in our lives to being a part of something that we could never take credit for, or experiencing some of the amazing things God wants to experience in our life. If we ever realize how close we were, that sometimes like we're on the verge of this, and we just don't take that next step, or the effort finally stops. I think if we had a clear picture of this, and it would be fascinating to me how different people's lives and things would look like. Because I really think that often God is ready to do amazing things in our lives, and he's just waiting for us to take that step, to put forth a little more effort, and we just never do it. And so I don't know, I think to myself, I'm like, how many things so far in my life, how many things have I missed out on God because at the end of the day my effort wasn't there? And so that's something I continually try to strive for. And I think for us here is something that I want to encourage our people, staff, everyone, is that if you put forth the effort with God, you're not going to be disappointed at what results from it.
There you go. Well, that was good. It was a good conversation, man. We got to do this again.
Yeah, do we want to talk about Christmas Eve real quick?
Oh, let's talk about Christmas Eve. I know you had some ideas.
I was just thinking when you were saying how we could top this is that if our producer and Matt James, one of the greatest Christmas songs ever, it's not really biblical, is Last Christmas by Wham. Mm-hmm. If those guys would come to Christmas Eve dressed as Andrew Ridgeley and George Michael, rest in peace, there's nothing around here that can even top that.
Oh, man. We're going to have to make that happen. We're just going to have to make that happen now.
I was supposed to try to sing the first verse one year to Christmas Eve service years ago, and I choked. So I trust me, our team, week in, week out, our team is awesome.
Exactly.
And they have abilities and skills that I can never dream of. Because when the lights came on me on the stage, I froze. I airballed the free throw. Okay, this is awesome, dude. We got to do this again. Great conversation. It's good to see you. We'll continue this conversation. That sounds like a plan.
Thanks for joining us this week on Let's Talk Podcast. Make sure to check us out at ccliveplus.com, where you can listen to past episodes and subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And one more thing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating on iTunes and tell someone about the show. Until next time.